Have you ever wondered what truly defines madness? Is it eccentric actions, unusual thoughts, or perhaps a radical way of seeing the world that goes beyond the comprehension of most? Today, we will explore the psychology of madness through the eyes of some of the greatest thinkers and philosophers in history, as well as psychologists who have revolutionized our understanding of the human mind. Prepare yourself, because this journey might change how you perceive madness. In Greek philosophy, Plato and Aristotle had distinct approaches to madness. For Plato, madness wasn't necessarily negative. It could be a divine gift. In his dialogue Phaedrus, he suggests that poets and prophets, often seen as mad, had access to a higher truth. This form of madness could be an expression of a special connection with the divine, something that transcends common human reason. On the other hand, Aristotle took a more pragmatic and scientific view. He believed that madness was related to an imbalance of humors, physical substances that governed the body and mind. For him, mental health depended on the harmony of these humors. Despite his more scientific outlook, Aristotle acknowledged that genius and creativity were often accompanied by traces of madness, highlighting the thin line between the genius and the mad. Together, Plato and Aristotle paved the way for understanding madness in Western philosophy. Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, brought an innovative perspective on madness by exploring it as a social construct in his book Madness and Civilization. He argued that throughout history, the concept of madness has been shaped by cultural and political changes. In the Middle Ages, mad people were seen with a certain reverence, often associated with a mystical connection to the divine or nature. However, as modernity progressed, society began to marginalize individuals considered mad. Foucault suggests that madness was gradually separated from social life and confined to asylums, where deviations from normal behavior were controlled. For him, what we consider madness reflects society's attempts to establish norms and control what is seen as deviant. Thus, madness may not be a fixed medical condition, but a label imposed on those who don't fit societal standards of behavior. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, revolutionized our understanding of madness by delving into the mysteries of the unconscious. For Freud, madness was not merely a brain dysfunction, but a reflection of repressed internal conflicts. He believed that mad behavior resulted from unconscious desires, traumas, and impulses emerging when the conscious mind could no longer keep them under control. Freud introduced the concepts of the ID, ego, and superego, representing, respectively, primitive impulses, rational consciousness, and internalized social norms. According to him, madness occurs when the balance between these three forces breaks down, allowing unconscious desires to dominate behavior. Conditions such as schizophrenia and hysteria, for example, were seen by Freud as the mind's attempts to cope with deep psychic conflicts. His approach placed madness within the psyche, forever changing the medical view of the topic. Carl Jung, a disciple of Freud, offered a distinct view of madness, treating it as part of the individuation process, the quest for self-knowledge, and the integration of the unconscious aspects of the mind. For Jung, madness wasn't necessarily a destructive rupture, but often an internal journey toward a deeper understanding of oneself. He believed that the human mind contained universal structures known as archetypes, which manifested in different ways. Among these archetypes, Jung saw the madman as a symbolic figure, representing a transitional phase in the psyche, where the individual momentarily loses touch with ordinary reality to explore the deepest recesses of the mind. Psychosis, according to Jung, could be a response to a disconnection between the individual and society, or an attempt to heal an inner imbalance. He viewed madness not just as an illness, but as an opportunity for psychological and spiritual growth. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most influential and controversial philosophers, approached madness deeply in his philosophy. He is known for exploring the idea of the will to power, where he believed life is a continuous struggle for self-assertion and growth. For Nietzsche, madness wasn't just a mental breakdown, but often the result of an individual's battle against the conventions and moralities imposed by society. Nietzsche challenged social norms and believed that those who dared to break free from these rules and seek their own truth were often labeled as mad. He himself suffered a mental collapse in his later years, sparking debates about the relationship between his philosophical work and his own mental condition. Nietzsche saw madness as a byproduct of the quest for an authentic and creative life, suggesting that those who challenge society's values are often seen as mad because they think far ahead of their time. Erich Fromm, psychoanalyst and sociologist, offered a deeply humanistic view of madness, arguing that in many cases, true madness is rooted in society itself. In his book Escape from Freedom, Fromm suggests that we live in a culture that promotes conformity, alienation, and the denial of individuality. For him, madness can be a natural and even healthy response to the oppressive environment we live in. Fromm believed that modern society creates constant pressure to conform to norms and expectations, which can stifle personal freedom and emotional growth. Those who resist this pressure or try to live according to their own convictions may be labeled as mad, but in Fromm's view, this resistance is often a legitimate quest for authenticity. He argued that the true pathology may lie in a society that represses individuality and encourages inhuman behaviors. For Fromm, madness can be a way of rejecting oppressive norms and embracing inner freedom. R.D. Laing, a British psychiatrist, brought an innovative view of madness, challenging traditional psychiatric conceptions. In his work, Laing argued that madness, especially in cases of schizophrenia, could be a logical response to an oppressive and disordered social environment. He saw mental illness not as an individual defect, but as a survival mechanism in a dysfunctional family or social context. Laing believed that the experiences of so-called mad people were not necessarily irrational, but rather an alternative way of seeing the world, a reflection of an internal reality that made sense to them. For him, society often labeled these individuals as mad to maintain control over what was considered normal. Laing suggested that instead of trying to cure these people by imposing external norms, we should listen and attempt to understand their unique experiences. In short, he saw madness as a process of resistance to an alienating society and, possibly, a path to self-discovery. Madness, throughout history, has been viewed in radically different ways depending on the philosophical, cultural, and psychological context. From ancient Greece with Plato and Aristotle to contemporary thinkers like Foucault and Laing, madness has been interpreted sometimes as a divine gift, sometimes as a biological imbalance, and even as a form of resistance to social oppression. Freud and Jung introduced new dimensions to the field of the psyche, exploring madness as a rupture between the conscious and unconscious, or as a journey toward individuation. The lingering question is madness truly a deviation from normality, or is it a way of understanding and challenging the norms imposed by society? Philosophers like Nietzsche and psychologists like Fromm and Laing suggest that madness may be a reaction to the rigidity of modern society, where the pursuit of authenticity and freedom is often labeled as pathological. Perhaps the true madness lies not in the individual's mind, but in the expectations and pressures of the society surrounding them.